Did you know that in the Hebrew Bible, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah were actually one? In fact, these two books were actually joined to Book of Chronicles, because Ezra wrote them all. Ezra wasn't just another scribe. He was a direct descendant of Aaron, the first high priest of Israel. When King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon captured Jerusalem, Ezra's ancestors were taken away as captives. But Ezra grew up to become something extraordinary, a scholar of God's Word, deeply committed to both living and teaching it as mentioned in Ezra 7:10. Jewish tradition says Ezra was the leader of a great council, 120 holy men, who carefully gathered and arranged the books that became our Old Testament. Why was that so important? Because after the prophet Malachi, God was silent for 400 years. During those centuries of silence, the scriptures Ezra helped preserve became the light for God's people. And it's believed Ezra also laid the foundation for the synagogue system that continues even today. He was a respected leader, writing 4 books in total: 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther all lived during the same empire, the Persian Empire. The Persians were very different from the Babylonians. While Babylon crushed and controlled, Persia allowed people to keep their culture and faith. And that's why we even see Esther and her uncle Mordecai rise to great influence, one as queen, the other as prime minister. Even in exile, God's hand was still guiding his people. Before Persia ruled, Babylon had taken Israel captive through 3 deportations. First in 606 BC, Jerusalem's kings were captured, but the temple remained. 10 years later, in 596 BC, merchants rebelled, and Babylon took away the middle class. Finally, in 586 BC, even the poor rebelled, and that's when Babylon destroyed Jerusalem and its temple completely. And so began 70 long years of exile. You might wonder, why exactly 70? Because God had told Israel to let the land rest every 7th year, like a Sabbath for the earth. For 500 years, they ignored it. So when you divide 500 by 7, you get roughly 70 missed Sabbaths. God let the land rest while his people were gone. The exile wasn't just punishment, it was repayment for what was owed to the land itself. But just like the exile happened in 3 stages, the return happened in 3 stages too. When Persia conquered Babylon, God moved the hearts of Persian kings to allow the Jews to return home. Ezra and Nehemiah were part of these return journeys. Many Jews, though, stayed behind in Babylon. They had built new lives there, families, and businesses. A return to Jerusalem meant a 900-mile journey, 4 long months on the road, and starting over with nothing. Only a few were willing to go back and rebuild what was lost. These books highlight 3 remarkable men: Zerubbabel, who helped rebuild the temple; Ezra, who revived the reading of God's Word; and Nehemiah, who rebuilt the city walls. Each of them lived under Persian kings who not only permitted, but also sponsored their work. Imagine that, the same empire funding God's restoration plan. Even 200 years earlier, the prophet Isaiah had already named the man who would set them free, King Cyrus of Persia. And just as God promised, Cyrus allowed the captives to return and rebuild. From Persia to Jerusalem, from exile to restoration, every step showed God's perfect timing. But the journey wasn't easy. All 3 leaders faced fierce opposition from those already living in the land. Still, God's purpose stood firm. He used kings, empires, and even exile itself to prepare the way for something greater, to rebuild not just walls, but hearts. The story of Ezra and Nehemiah reminds us, even when we've been torn down, God can rebuild. He restores what sin has broken, and when we return to Him, He makes all things new.